Decades ago, my world as a boy in Central Florida was divided into two worlds. One below the reflective surface of the creeks and lakes, which contained the endlessly pursued largemouth and pickerel. The other was the light blue, sun-suffused vault above, which enveloped the soaring raptors that seemed to float or hang on invisible strings. This story is about one of those worlds. I was not a fisherman-hunter in the traditional sense, more of a scientist, you might say. Or, but you can't say this, a philosopher. I fished not for food for the belly, but for food for the mind. I wanted to know what was down there. I wanted to hold it in my hand for a moment and show its shimmering colors in the sun. Why are the fish so bright and shining out of the water if not to reveal their beauty in the light for a moment? And then I would release that beauty back below to fend for itself. Same for the great soaring raptors of the limitless sky. The hawks, the vultures, the ospreys, the caracaras, also those weightless avian shapes appropriately called kites, because that is exactly what they appeared to be, hanging in the air. Those many dihedral flyers have to fold their wings sometime, somewhere, at night and at the nest. Where are those nests? Easy enough to find if you're a kid with the skills to go over land and water in any direction. There, in their nests, where all their beauty is instilled, in their eggs, some speckled, some blotched, some plain. They were what I wanted to observe, to absorb, to comprehend. The eggs. How many are there? What colors? What exact shape? Again, I never collected, as ornithologists did in the old days, even Audubon and Wilson. I looked, I counted, I experienced, I left. In order to see such eggs, you have to get to the nest. In order to get to the nest, you have to climb trees. That's what this story generally is about. And in order to ascend to the ultimate challenge, I would have to climb to the tallest tree, the loblolly pine supporting at 100 feet the great sticked nest of the eagle. That's what this story specifically is about. Keep in mind, I was already an accomplished climber at age 14. I was a master with climbing gaffs and a flip line. I had conquered scores of pines and cypress to peer into the hidden secrets of redtails, crows, short-tails, red-shouldereds, kites, even ospreys, the fish-diving raptor who traversed both my worlds, both hovering in the blue and pulling shining fish up from the deep. All through my 20s, I worked with academicians gathering nesting data on bird populations far and wide. I still have my helmet with scars from horned owls defending eagle nests from Maine to Louisiana. I think I can claim to have been, in my heyday, a master climber to eyries short and tall. But today is before most of that. I should mention here that the old wives' tale about handling eggs or young birds causing nest abandonment is exactly that. Rarely do adult birds abandon a trespassed nest. In fact, the statistical data gathered from counted and banded young has been invaluable for preserving birds of prey. Sometimes there is physical violence from defending parents, But the real damage, in my experience, came from interloping owls, which were trespassers themselves. Those owls seemed fearless, untroubled, like suicidal bomber pilots. But today was my first eagle. The pine was tall and straight, a near perfect column 2.5 feet in diameter, with the first branches jutting out and beseeching the sky a good 70 feet up. Trunk diameter decreases only slightly until the first branches are encountered, so I figured I should be able to gaff my way up with an 8-foot flip line, which was an insane idea, but I didn't know that at the time. The circumference of the tree was probably 7.5 feet. I had almost no slack at all. I shouldn't have been able to get off the ground, but I did. I was self-taught and strong and simply pressed my equipment to its limits. I walked up to that tree with my chest out and arms spread wide, as if I had asked a giant girl for a slow rumba at a school dance, and put my arms around her. At age 14 back then, this was 10 years before I would ask a girl, any girl, for anything. Except for the sheer extra height beyond what I had gone to before, I figured today's climb would be about the same as before. It had taken me a while to find an eagle nest in a pine. Most of the cypress had too great a circumference for my flip line, but now I had it. You might want to know how I measured the height of the nest. There is all kinds of trigonometry you can do involving the length of pencils and shadows and angles and such, but I had a pretty good method which was quite accurate when I took the trouble to test it years later with real instruments. I thought I could plainly see a 10 or 11 foot length on the tree by eye, roughly double my height. So, starting at the base of the tree, I just end-over-ended that same distance with my eye up to the top. I later found that, if anything, my calibrations were underestimating. In any case, the tree under current consideration was more than 8 of those, maybe as many as 2 more, close to 100 feet. I got to about 30 feet right away, like a lineman going up a Douglas fir power pole, picking up one knee and one gaff higher, braced by the other already stabbed into the trunk, and slamming it home a half-foot higher again and again, jigging the flip line around the back of the tree about that same distance, higher with each step. But then I encountered what we used to call a stob, a short, thick, round projection, maybe 10 inches out and a foot thick, what was left from the grown-over base of a big limb that had fallen off. I had seen it from the ground, but I figured I could maneuver around it as with any other limb. But the trunk had not narrowed enough when I got up to it for me to support myself and wiggle the line around the stob. I was still virtually flat against the trunk with my chest like against a wooden flat cliff. If there is an experienced climber listening out there, you might want to turn this off now, if you haven't already. There wasn't enough slack in the line to maneuver over the stob. I only needed an extra inch, but it just wasn't there. Worse, I had raised one knee up high and dug in the gaff, and I couldn't raise it up again far enough to pull the gaff out so I could stab it in at a different angle lower down. The sharp tungsten blade stabbed firmly in the living wood behind the flaky bark. Maybe the back of the tree, which I couldn't see, was wider there, or maybe there was another stob on the backside that I couldn't see. With my knee halfway up to my chin, I was crumpled against the trunk as if a loggerhead shrike had pinned me to a thorn bush for later consumption. I was jammed and trapped. For a good half hour in the beating sun, I tried to wrestle the gaff free or get the loop of the flip line over the stop. I thought madly of reaching into my pack and starting in on my peanut butter sandwich and water while I thought it over, only to realize I had left that on the ground. There was no maneuver room to reach for it anyway. As I weakened, I realized I was not going to make it to the top, and I decided I would probably have to go back down in defeat. But my knee was still jammed between the gaff and the tree with my flip line hung up under the stop, so I couldn't even go down. Another half hour passed of wiggling and squirming and trying to send a wave through the line and around the back of the tree to the other side to get just an inch of slack to get the line over the stop to free me up. Nothing doing. I was at the absolute equipment limit. Did I mention the beating heat? There was a little kid at the bottom of the tree who often followed me on my expeditions. We were only 4 or 5 miles from the house, although the intervening palmetto was a pretty rough road. "You want me to get your dad?" he yelled. I nodded no, vociferously. He made no further comment. Gradually, I figured what I had to do. I squinched enough to unbuckle the harness from the line on my right non-stop side and threw the line as far as I could around the tree, hoping it wasn't stuck on the bark on the back. I was now steadying myself with my left hand on the stop, but with no pull from the attached line to lean back against, the line now hanging down uselessly on my stop hand side. I was now easily able to stand upright, although in panic denial about refusing to think about falling off the trunk backwards without the cheerful centripetal pull on the flip line towards the trunk. I suddenly felt like I was higher up than I had ever been, which was true without an attached flip line. I could now throw the line back around the trunk and hook up again. I would be up past the stop and could go on up, but I already knew I needed to abort mission and go back down and wait for a better day with better equipment and maybe a better brain. It would be much easier to peel the line over the stop going down than going up. I considered myself wise that I had admitted defeat and was planning my descent. Maybe you can see my problem. I couldn't get the flip line reattached. I tried over and over, flinging the line around the trunk, but I didn't have enough force or balance to draw back and fling it back around within reach of my other hand. Again and again I flung the line, but the loose end did not appear on the right for my free hand to grab, no matter how much I tried to snap and whip it. By this time I was holding on to the stop with everything I had left and just trying to keep from falling. The stop was way too short to sit on or straddle, or even if it was, there was not enough of it to steady me without the line if I pulled out one of the gaffs. I tried to wrap the line around the stop, but it wouldn't hold for even a single coil. In addition to its shortness, the thing was actually slanted downwards a bit. There was no way to get any kind of purchase on it at all. There was no higher branch, even close to near enough, even if I'd had the strength or balance to throw the line up. I thought if I could get one of the gaffs out without falling backwards, I might be able to get both hands on the stop, but what would that do? I would hang down a couple of feet closer to the ground, 2 feet less on a 30-foot fall. I tried to remember what the ground was like at the base of the tree. Even, uneven, hard, soft, some scrub to break the fall. My right gaff slipped, and I had one good foothold left and was spread-eagled against the wooden cliff with one hand on that miserable giant pimple of a stub. I came to understand that I was going to fall. In recent years, I've tried to remember if there could have been another tree shorter that I could have sprung to like Superman. But there wasn't. I know it. That eagle tree was in a clearing in the short palmettos. I was hung up for the duration, which was not going to be long. I needed wings like the denizens of the sky, and I didn't have those. It was at that point that the great bird from above took the trouble to glide down and have a look. He circled with a flap or two in a tight radius. I could see his magnificent but ruthless yellow eye. Was he assessing me, my chances, my character? Was he gathering detail so he could tell the story? I vowed then that if I survived, I would never climb that tree again. I would climb many other trees, look into many other eagle nests, which I did, but not that one. Whatever beauty was in that nest would be forever unknown to me. I fell.